After making a ranking video for The Dark Knight, it's only fair to focus on his fellow leaguer, the first and greatest superhero, Superman. Due to Superman's true power being largely uncontested within the Justice League, who better to compare Superman to than, well, Superman. By now, some of you have a gist of how I'll be approaching this. I'll basically be taking a look at and scale his different counterparts and rank them from weakest to strongest off their best displayed feats. Due to most of these versions having the typical Superman abilities, flight, heat vision, super strength, super hearing, you get the gist of it. I won't be going too in depth on their abilities unless it plays a factor in where they're placed in this ranking. And to right my sins from my previous video, I'll be including every version of Superman that's relevant scaling. But enough of me wasting time, and let's get into it. Coming in at the bottom is the newly anointed Superman of the Tomorrowverse, who, while still being relatively young and inexperienced, could still go to blows and endure a beatdown by the hands of Lobo while being nerfed by Kryptonite, with Lobo being able to casually create city block level craters while beating down Superman, meaning that this Superman at his worst would fall in these ranges as well. Some of his higher end strength feats include him tossing a space shuttle from Earth into outer space, a feat which, when factoring the average size of a space rocket, would yield town levels amounts of energy. His combat and reaction speed should at least scale to or above his movement speeds, flying from Earth to space after losing to Lobo in a span of 13 seconds, which is a feat that would pretty much fall in the hypersonic ranges of speed. Although his scaling may seem lackluster, he's likely to see massive improvements in the face of the upcoming crisis that awaits his verse. Right above Tomorrowverse Superman on a very underwhelming note is Young Justice's version of Superman, who's just blatantly weaker than the Lords of Order and Chaos, with two of the Lords of Chaos, that being Clarion and Child, being capable of sinking entire continents, lifting large landmasses, and with their counterpart Dr. Fate being able to endure and redirect torrents of lasers from the war planet. Lasers that were implied and outright shown to be capable of devastating the entirety of Earth. Even with Superman scaling below these threats, he's still stated by the creator Greg Weisman to be the strongest of the Leaguers, meaning that he should at least scale to or above the feats of the Wonder Womans of the worlds, the Flashes, the Martian Manhunters, with the prior being stated to be able to run at speeds approaching the speed of light, meaning that while running, Flash generates upwards of 2.1 gigatons of TNT or large mountain levels of energy at his peak, ranges that this Superman would have to at least scale to. However, when trying to find an accurate estimate for his speed, this is where we run into some problems. He obviously somewhat scales to the higher end speeds of the verse, but in all honesty, outside of the Flashes and a select few characters, the speed of this verse isn't too impressive. He should at the bare minimum have the reaction and combat speeds to tag characters like Kid Flash, who could pretty much dodge every form of military weaponry, and Wonder Girl, who could deflect bullets, feats that would fall in the supersonic ranges of combat and reaction speeds, but outside of that, there's not much else I can reasonably scale him to. It's pretty obvious that he's nowhere near as fast as Flash or Impulse at their top speeds, and there's no feat that show that he can react to things moving anywhere near these speeds as well. Time and time again in Young Justice, it's made blatantly clear that Wally is way slower than the other speedsters, with the creator stating that Kid Flash can run near the speed of sound while Barry can run at speeds approaching light, an 87,000 times difference. So having reactions similar to or above Kid Flash doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. Even if you try to piggyback scale Superman's reactions to Black Beetle's Scarab, which I don't know how you could, that was stated to take in and process at speeds faster than Impulse can think, there's just no feat that proves this applies to Superman, with even the creator of Young Justice stating that his version of Superman isn't faster than a speeding bullet off the get-go, implying that it would take this Superman some acceleration time before he could break the sound barrier. So yeah, the phrase faster than a speeding bullet might not apply to this version. And although he has way less experience, the Superman from the My Adventures of Superman series would be right above Young Justice Superman, showcasing a very impressive growth rate throughout his first season, such as that time he got pressed and eventually beat a military robot that was capable of shattering a large metal wall, a feat which, when judging off the violent fragmentation of the wall, would require 732 billion joules of energy, giving this robot and by proxy Superman multi-city block levels of attack potency and durability. Later in the season, Superman would then go on to combat better and stronger adversaries, most notably Parasite, who before being mutated could go blow for blow against Superman. After suffering a humiliating defeat by the hands of Superman, and after being disfigured beyond repair, he would go on to power up by absorbing all the energy within Metropolis, which would pretty much transform him into a kaiju and amp his power to an unimaginable level, and he still lost to Superman. But Superman's best calced feat, however, was shown in episode 10 of the series, where he was able to push the large invasion ship into space, which by judging off the size and density of the ship was calculated to mountain level ranges of energy. And while you can argue this feat is more of a lifting feat than a striking feat, it's important to note that this feat was more than just Superman lifting an object. It was more of a push that involved Superman rapidly combating and stopping the speed of the ship's descent with his own power and speed. So this feat can be used to quantify his lifting and striking strength. So you're probably wondering how this puts him over Young Justice Superman. Young Justice Superman is large mountain level, while while the other is only mountain level, a 5 times difference in strength, on top of the fact that he has much more experience in using his abilities. But there's mainly 2 reasons why I put this version of Superman above him, one of them being speed. This Superman was capable of flying from the Kent farm to Metropolis in the span of a few seconds, a feat that would give this version of Superman Mach 27 or high hypersonic movement speeds, which his reactions and combat speeds would kinda have to scale to, meaning that in the time it takes Young Justice Superman to reach bullet speed, this Superman is breaking the sound barrier 25 times over, meaning that Young Justice Superman's younger counterpart would naturally have reactions and combat speeds that are 10 times over his own. On top of the speed gap, My Adventures of Superman has access to his electricity power-up, which greatly increases his AP and speed, which made him go from getting thrashed by Parasite to being able to one-tap him, which would close the gap and pretty easily give him an advantage in strength, on top of the overwhelming speed gap. The DC animated movie universe's version of Superman scales to and above the heavy hitters of the Justice League, with the likes of Shazam being able to destroy large parts of planet Reaper, which was durable enough to survive being pulled from above orbit and slamming into Earth. And judging off the crater from the impact, this means that planet Reaper can endure mountain levels of energy without taking any damage. And since Superman scales above Shazam in this verse, he too would fall in these ranges. His reaction and combat speeds are also very impressive, with him being able to tag and break the leg of the Flash, who could casually make lightning look like it's moving in slow motion, giving the Flash and Superman high-end massively hypersonic combat and reaction speeds, making them astronomically faster than the tier below. They would literally move in slow motion to him. His relativity to the Flash in speed is also supported by the fact that only him and the Flash were able to briefly evade the Omega Beams before being hit, with the Omega Beams outright blitzing Shazam, who has a good case for being the 3rd fastest. So it's pretty much implied that Superman and the Flash are a great deal faster than the rest, with the Flash being the faster of the two, but Superman can still somewhat keep up. Henry Cavill's version of Superman is honestly just on another level of power when compared to these other versions, being capable of destroying the World Engine in as early as Man of Steel, with the World Engine being able to survive slamming into the Earth at hypersonic speeds. On top of that, the Man of Steel novelization blatantly stated that the World Engine would terraform Earth in a new Krypton in a matter of weeks, something that would require 1.6 teratons or small country levels of energy to perform. And since Superman one-tapped the World Engine that can not only survive a collision, but survive and endure terraforming and surface wiping the entire planet, Superman would have to scale to these ranges, making him over 1,000 times stronger than his DC animated movie counterpart. Mind you, Superman would then go on to get stronger and faster, combating and defeating his version of Doomsday, who also has his own version of Heat Vision, which is just as fast as Superman's, with Superman's Heat Vision being stated in the guides to move at the speed of light. And due to characters like Wonder Woman and even Batman being able to react to it, this would give Cavill's Superman relativistic reaction and combat speeds. This is further bolstered by him being able to manhandle Steppenwolf, who could tag the Flash. So yeah, he'd quite literally speed blitz in one shot every other version under him. Superman from the Superman vs. the Elite movie would be vastly above Cavill, being able to endure cold cast electric attacks, which cold cast compared to, quote, 15 suns blowing up in his face. But this statement can't really be taken too seriously, since it was clearly shown to not have that much energy. I mean, the moon was literally still intact, so the statement is probably hyperbole. We're looking at the actual yield of a blast. This feat has been calced to 6.9 teratons of TNT, or 4.3 times stronger than Cavill. But it's possible that this feat is kinda like a Dragon Ball situation, where the AoE of the blast isn't that large, but the power still remains on that level. But the problem is that everything the Elite have shown are very clearly not on this level. So I find it more likely that this was more of a hyperbolic statement in the heat of the moment than an actual logical statement. For his speed, Superman, after taking off his restraints and letting loose, was able to fly from the moon to the Earth 22 seconds after Manchester Black and Codecast were teleported back to Earth, a speed feat that would fall in the high sub-relativistic ranges, meaning that Cavill would be a tad bit faster due to him being in the low relativistic ranges, but the difference isn't enough to warrant a blitz, and this Superman's very clearly more experienced in his powers and abilities than Cavill's Superman. An argument you could make for this Superman being placed higher is in his form of Duroneg and his X-ray vision, but like every other version of Superman has this to some capacity, and I doubt he could do what he did to Manchester Black to his other counterparts. Superman doesn't even have a metagene to target. The LEGO variant of Superman who first appeared in the LEGO Batman games starts off the next tier, and like I did for Batman in my last video, which you should watch, he'll be scaled up to our world size, since you know, he's a LEGO. Now to scale Superman, I'll first have to go over his fight against Brainiac's main ship, where he was shown being able to fight back and clash with Brainiac's ship beams that are capable of shrinking planetary bodies as large as Earth. This is made very clear since Brainiac literally states that he's tired of collecting cities and instead wants to add entire worlds to his collection. The energy required to make the Earth pocket size within a small time frame would be around 59 zetatons of TNT, comfortably placing this feat in the planetary level ranges that this version of Superman, due to fighting off the attack, would fall within, making LEGO Superman 59 billion times stronger than the prior Superman. LEGO Superman also has relativistic to light speed scaling implications, being able to react to and combat waves of energy fired out of Brainiac's ship, waves that were fast enough to encompass the entirety of the planet seemingly instantaneously, a feat that would at least fall in the relativistic to light speed ranges, speeds this version of Superman would need to keep up with it. So LEGO Superman unironically solos. The OG version of Superman to hit the big screens, that being Christopher Reeve's Superman, would be above LEGO Superman, showcasing feats that are way more impressive than that of his LEGO counterpart, by being able to move the moon to block the sun out, creating a solar eclipse in a span of 6 seconds, a display of power that would require 1.8 yotatons of kinetic energy to perform. When evaluating his speed, you already know what I'm going to bring up. Christopher Reeves was able to outright break the laws of physics and circle around the Earth at speeds faster than light, moving so fast against the orbit of the Earth that the man literally reversed time. I don't think I need to tell you what this man would do to LEGO Superman in a fight. And at the top of this tier is a Superman from the Millerverse or the Dark Knight Returns comics, a version of Superman that I feel isn't really taken as seriously as he should be. The most I hear about this version when power scaled is that he was hit by a nuke and almost died and got the brakes beaten off of him by Batman, which isn't wrong, but is completely underselling what he's capable of. When looking at him being taken out of commission by the nuke, something that isn't outright brought to our attention in the Dark Knight Returns film, but is in the comic and graphic novel, is that the Soviet Union's nuke only hurt Superman due to it blocking out all sunlight and severely nerfing him. I'm not arguing he wouldn't have taken any damage from it, it was just a combination of both factors, with the lack of sunlight being the bigger one. If you really want an accurate gauge of his power, look no less to the 2007 Countdown Arena comic, where this version of Superman is shown fighting against and eventually alongside other versions of himself to help take down Monarch, who pretty much pulled up on and grabbed multiple different variations of the Leaguers and put them all in an arena to fight each other. This is important because this version of Superman was shown moving on par with and clashing with Earth 30 or Red Sun Superman, the same Superman who's fast enough to fly Brainiac to the edge of the solar system in a matter of seconds, and also strong enough to endure Brainiac's explosion, which was stated by Lex Luthor to be capable of destroying everything in a 15 million mile radius. Since Venus, the closest planet to Earth, is 25 million miles away, this will mean that Brainiac's bomb is capable of destroying the Earth and the moon, a feat calced to 1.4 yotatons of TNT. And mind you, this version of Superman was pretty much downplayed by Millerverse Superman. Millerverse Superman would then go on to settle his beef with the Red Sun, overpowering and knocking out Red Sun Superman before passing out from radiation poisoning, meaning that Millerverse Superman would be at an even higher end of planetary. When trying to better quantify his speed, he's relative in speed to characters like Lara, his daughter from the future, who was shown in the Dark Knight 3 Master Race, flying at FTL speeds, flying from the Earth to the Sun in a relatively quick time frame, something that would require low FTL speeds to perform, speeds Millerverse Superman would naturally scale to. But his most impressive display of combat speed and durability would be when he was able to react to and endure a beatdown from the likes of Monarch, a character who, while very suppressed, is very capable of casually destroying planets like it's nothing, meaning that it's possible that this Superman's AP and durability might fall into large planetary level ranges at a high ball. So him and the Christopher Reeves version of Superman are pretty much at the same level of strength, with Earth 31 Superman being a decent bit faster. But what really made me place him over Reeves is his skill, showcasing a level of skill and battle IQ later in the Dark Knight 3, where he's shown combating a dozen Kryptonians, all of which that were stated to be stronger and faster than Superman by Batman. He shattered their collarbones, broke their femur, dented their ribs, striking and evading simultaneously, impressing Batman so much so that he admits inferiority to Superman when it comes to the geometry of physical violence, with Batman calling himself a student compared to Superman, showing a level of skill that the Donnerverse's version of Superman lacks. So even if you want to give the slight edge to Christopher Reeve's Superman in strength, it likely wouldn't matter. Next up is the Superman shown in the Superman and Lois series. Just to clear up some confusion on if Superman from this show is the same as Arrowverse Superman, the showrunner of Superman and Lois outright said that these are two different versions of Superman, but he also said to think of this most recent version of Superman as a doppelganger of Arrowverse Superman. So for the sake of consistency, I'll just refer to him as CW Superman, and I'll only be using his scaling from Superman and Lois. Moving on, by the end of season 1, Superman was able to release all of the solar energy within his body, which he compared to and outright stated would be a solar flare, a statement that really shouldn't be taken as hyperbole given the context of the situation. So it makes more sense for Superman to actually be serious. With large solar flares being calced to produce upwards of 10 to the 25th joules of energy, this would pretty much mean that at this point, CW Superman can generate 4.3 pentatons, or the energy to destroy multiple continents. Just to put it to perspective, the peak power produced by this Superman is the energy equivalent of 10 million volcano eruptions. But in the next season, Superman performed feats that have crazy scaling implications. After sun dipping and regaining his power, Superman was able to undo the merger of the two worlds caused by Alley in a single blow. I also think it's important to note that in this context, when I say world, I don't mean planet. As we know off of DC's cosmology and even the Arrowverses, they commonly refer to the different universes and space-times as worlds in the grand scheme of the multiverse. What supports this even further is the fact that not only the planets, but the solar masses from both worlds, that being the Bizarroverse and CWverse, were also shown colliding as well. So what really makes this feat impressive for Superman is the fact that after sun dipping for a few seconds, Superman became astronomically stronger than he's ever been. In response to this new power, Alley took all of his newfound power and absorbed it, which caused her to overcharge herself and weaken Clark. This same weakened and nerfed Clark one-tapped her. Then after being drained, Superman still had enough of his energy left while not being at 100% to stop two planetary-sized bodies from merging. Now a good amount of people actually believe that this is a universal feat, but that's just not the case. Technically, Superman did prevent the eventual merge of the universes, but he more so physically broke the link of the incursion opposed to actually physically pushing back two universes. The merging of the two universes were essentially going to be a byproduct of the two planets and solar masses merging together, and Superman pretty much caused a chain reaction by separating those two planets, and that reaction prevented the merging of the two worlds. So this pretty much means that by season 2, CW Superman, when building up some steam, can generate enough energy to prevent two stars and two planets from merging. A feat that would pretty easily fall in the star level to possibly even large star level ranges of power. Even if you don't buy the fact that Alley absorbed all of the solar amp he got, he was still able to perform and endure the energy and the explosion of the feat, energy that was shown engulfing the entirety of the solar system. And if you know anything about Newton's third law, this would mean that Superman is durable enough to endure the counterforce from that feat, putting his power on another stratosphere when compared to Smallville Superman. When looking at his speed, pretty much he was fast enough to fly from the sun to the earth and save Steel and Natalie in a span of 37 seconds, making him 13 times faster than light. So yeah, he'd actually be in those same ranges as Smallville Superman. Long-awaited power of the Arkhamverse Superman didn't disappoint, with him being stated to be the strongest leaguer by his fellow members and being implied by Batman even before the events of the game to be capable of lifting the entire planet. A statement that, if we take at face value, would mean that this Superman can lift up to 13 septillion tons. More importantly, he would later go on to receive an amp through Brainiac's modifications that were stated and shown to draw out the entire JLA's full potential, amping them beyond imagination, with Superman now stating that he can move the entire planet with his fists alone, something that would require small planetary levels of energy, and punching the earth so hard that he changed the time of day. A feat that has some higher and lower end interpretations that vary, but has consistently been calced to the large planetary level range at a minimum. His combat and reaction speeds, however, are way more impressive, with him being shown in his fight against the Suicide Squad, flying from the Earth to the Sun in the span of a few seconds to stave off his kryptonite poisoning, a display of speed that would entail massively faster than light speeds, and this wasn't even him at his best. So CW Superman would pretty much have to deal with someone who's at least hundreds of times faster than him, albeit weaker but more skilled and experienced, on top of his bloodlust due to Brainiac. So we're pretty much in a situation where CW Superman has the power to one-shot Arkhamverse Superman, but can't actually land a hit, whereas Arkham Superman would know of all the ways to nerf his other self and have all the time in the world to do so. All he really has to do is take a throne to LexCorp, grab some kryptonite, and stab CW Superman with it, something that he could actually do due to his stronger kryptonite resistances due to Brainiac's influence, shown with him fighting off Wonder Woman while having a literal stride of kryptonite in his chest, something he could do before his counterpart would even notice something's up, a method that a Brainiac controlled Superman wouldn't be above. When discussing a strength versus speed matchup, when a gap's as big as this and a bloodlusted Superman's involved, I'm taking speed every time. The DC Animated Universe's version of Superman comes in right above this, and due to the recent movie that dropped in 2017, that being Justice League vs. the Fatal 5, really gives us an idea of how strong this version of Superman is. Towards the end of the movie, Superman was able to endure the force of Empress's bomb, which she confirmed would destroy the sun. Empress would then go on to do exactly that, and Superman pretty much tanked this explosion straight up and walked away with minimal to no damage. And since Empress's bomb literally did destroy the sun, the energy required to do so would be 136 crater tons or star levels amounts of energy. When scaling his speed, just as I pointed out in my other video, his contemporary leaguers have light speed implications, with the Flash and Wonder Woman being able to react to attacks from lantern rings, which are stated to move at the speed of light. And there's even a faster than light meta when regarding the Omega beams, which would have had to have been even faster than the lantern rings since he was able to blitz Superman in his earlier days. But he's actually way faster than I originally thought, being able to push a broken down ship into a nearby star system while in space. And while cinematic timing can't exactly likely be used for this feat, we know that Superman followed a vapor trail left behind by the ship, and due to the volatile conditions of outer space, it wouldn't even be possible for that trail to remain stable in outer space for a long duration of time. Without that trail, that feat wouldn't have even been possible. It makes more sense within the narrative for this feat to have been performed in a short span of time than say a day or two, especially due to the fact that there were literal passengers on that ship, meaning that Superman would have had to have covered multiple light years of distance in the span of hours if we're pushing it. For the sake of trying to quantify it, let's just say the nearest star system with this feat is the same distance as Alpha Centauri is to us. So let's just say 4 light years, and let's be conservative and say it took Superman 5 hours to reach it. This would mean that Superman would have had to have moved at about 1752 times the speed of light at a low end, meaning that in the time it takes most of these versions of Superman's synapses to fire up, this version can hit them billions upon billions of times over, making a fight between this Superman and the others a speed blitz, a one-shot, or both. But even with this strength and speed, the DC animated universe's Superman would still be below All-Star Superman, who, after diving in the sun to save workers during their botched mission, was supercharged by solar radiation, drastically increasing and amplifying his abilities by an unimaginable level, now being able to bench 200 quintillion tons, or a third of the earth, with a single hand, a feat that's stated to be 3 times over his prior record, and this is still nowhere near his newly acquired strength's limit. He himself stated that he felt so much stronger that he could separate a planet into 2, a statement that has merit to it after seeing the displays of power this Superman has shown, meaning that this Superman has over 433 exatons, or small planet levels of force behind his strikes, at a minimum. More impressively, this Superman was able to combat and defeat Solaris, a literal rogue sentient sun who was going to devour and replace the sun of Earth, which would mean that Solaris can overpower the gravitational binding energy of the sun, giving him as a result star levels of AP and durability. So he's in a similar weight class as the DC animated universe's Superman. When trying to gauge his speed, Superman was able to fly from Earth to Alpha Centauri in the time it took Lois to take a shower. This would mean that Superman likely flew from Earth to the nearest star system, or 4 light years, in a span of 15 minutes, giving this version of Superman massively faster than light speeds, with his feet being 419,000 times faster than his animated counterpart. But even with all his power, it still greatly pales in comparison to his humanity, laying down his life for others and reminding us all of the beauty of life, and revealing to Lex that it's not power that saves the world, it's the person behind it. Smallville Superman is pretty freaking busted, saving the entire world by preventing a collision between it and Apocalypse, a feat when taken at face value and when comparing the size of Apocalypse to planets in our solar system, would require 760 quatatons or large star levels of energy to perform, making him way stronger than every other Superman under him. On top of the fact that he's way stronger, the same also applies to his speed, which was shown in the 7th volume of the 11th season, where he was shown flying to another sector of the universe, that sector being Parallax, in a relatively short span of time. Due to the lanterns encompassing a large majority of the universe, even within Smallville's verse, it's likely that he flew to a completely different galaxy, a speed feat that has been calced to 22 billion times the speed of light. Not only is he several times stronger than All-Star Superman, he'd also pretty much speed blitz him. And while we're still on the topic of a speed blitz, Smallville's evil counterpart from the Injustice continuity would stand at the top of this tier, even though he's just way weaker than the other versions. In Injustice Gods Among Us Year 4 issue 22, Superman spun the block on Darkseid, flying from Earth to Apocalypse in the few moments it took for Harley to get captured and tied up by Darkseid. Assuming that the size of the Injustice universe's cosmology is similar to that of the mainline comics, which I don't know why it wouldn't be, which was revealed in the Our Worlds at War storyline to have expanded at a rate of 60 trillion light years per half second, which would mean that since the DC universe is 10 billion light years old, this will make the size of it 37.8 nonillion light years wide. And this value isn't even including the Spear of the Gods, which is 18 billion years old. 8 billion years old in the multiverse, which would make its size 38 nonillion light years wide, meaning that at an absolute lowball, Injustice Superman flew at least a nonillion light year in a few minutes to pretty much cross over into the Spear of the Gods and swap hands with Darkseid, meaning that for Superman to have performed this feat, he would have to have been moving 3.8 undecillion times faster than light. So at this point, if you didn't notice already, any strength gap between him and the other versions that may exist would be rendered obsolete. Before Smallville Superman could so much as quantify his existence in any capacity, Injustice Superman would already be employing and enacting his strategies, going to Earth and grabbing a golden kryptonite knife and cutting him and these other versions with it, subsequently depowering them before putting them down. Even though him being weaker wouldn't matter in this scenario, I'll just go over his AP anyways just for the sake of consistency, and since I did allude to him being weaker than these other versions. Injustice Superman has consistent large planetary scaling, threatening to destroy Apocalypse, and scaling to Zod, who was shown in his ultimate to be capable of punching through the moon. He was also shown combating and fighting against Mogo, a sentient living planet who he literally pushed into the sun, which has been calced to large planet level ranges. But it's important to note that while performing this feat, Superman was amped by a Yellow Lantern ring given to him by Sinestro. But even if we include that feat, his power would still be in these ranges, but you haven't seen anything yet. As shown in the 545th issue of the Adventures of Superman comic, published in 1997, it was revealed that after combating the Sun Eater and failing to prevent it from consuming the Earth's sun, Superman lost his powers, forcing his body to adapt to an entirely different energy source, leading to his transformation into a being of pure energy known as Superman Blue, losing his X-ray vision and allowing him to see the electromagnetic spectrum in its entirety, granting him a host of new abilities such as intangibility, power over the entire electromagnetic spectrum, electrokinesis, energy absorption, teleportation, and many other abilities, with this newly empowered Superman now stating that he's stronger and faster than he's ever been, meaning that Superman Blue would naturally, due to this statement, scale above his 1994 self, who alongside others in Zero Hour, focused all his energy through the all-knowing Wave Rider to help spark the Big Bang, playing a large part in preventing Parallax, amped by the crisis energy left over from the NT Monitor, from recreating the DC multiverse in his likeness, a feat when factoring the sheer magnitude and scope of Parallax's power would at a minimum warrant high universal to low multiversal amounts of energy contributions from Superman. A lot of people try to discredit this feat altogether and claim that Superman and the others contributed nothing to this feat due to the energy total not being enough until the Spectre contributed his energy, but this isn't entirely accurate. Just because the Spectre contributed more energy to make this feat possible doesn't mean they didn't contribute to the energy total at all, with Brainiac even acknowledging all of their contributions and noting that their energies were necessary, likely meaning that the Spectre's energy alone wouldn't have been enough. Although it's impossible to really quantify how much energy Superman really contributed, it just narratively wouldn't make sense for Superman to even be there if he wasn't contributing a decent amount of energy. This in turn would pretty easily put base post-crisis Superman over Injustice Superman, and his Superman Blue transformation would pretty much be a massive amp on top of all that power, meaning that at this point, it's likely that post-crisis Superman has the power to destroy multiple infinite-sized space-times. Just off that statement of him being faster than he's ever been, he would also scale to and above the many speed feats that he's shown in base, being able to tag the likes of Darkseid, who in the past could keep up with and combat the likes of pre-crisis Superman, who's been shown moving at immeasurable speeds, showcasing the ability to casually break through the bounds of space and time. So he would also have immeasurable combat and reaction speeds due to his relativity to Darkseid in speed. The Bizarro world counterpart of the post-crisis Superman would be stronger than an early post-crisis Superman. While doing research for this video, I found that there were multiple versions of Bizarro in just the post-crisis alone, with the common denominator between these versions being the fact that they literally just died. On a lighter note, the version of Bizarro I'll be scaling is a variant created by Emperor Joker during the Emperor Joker storyline, where Joker pretty much finessed Mr. Mxyzptlk and literally became a fifth dimensional entity. Anyways, Bizarro on multiple occasions was able to go head to head against the early 2000s post-crisis Superman, being able to endure a barrage of blows from Superman while showing little to no damage, with post-crisis Superman speculating that Bizarro might actually be stronger than he is. But due to the way Bizarro's brain functions, or doesn't function as Superman puts it, he can't really draw out his full potential. This is also somewhat similar to something post-crisis Superman dealt with as well, with his powers largely being predicated by his emotions and mental state, with Darkseid himself saying that Superman's powers require his full active brain to drive them, so it is consistent. So he's kind of just vaguely below post-crisis Superman, meaning that he should scale over the aforementioned version due to his relativity to a later post-crisis Superman, who went on to get stronger and face newer and greater threats, with Superman now combating the likes of Emperor Joker and somewhat holding his own, likely meaning that at this point, Superman far surpassed the power of his blue and red amp, yet he still believes Bizarro is still relative, if not stronger than him. Bizarro would in addition have an argument of having immeasurable speed implications, scaling off of post-crisis Superman, who from his own mouth stated that Bizarro was just as fast as he was. Mind you, post-crisis Superman at this point was able to break through the boundaries of space and time, and has on multiple occasions showcased some relativity to DC speedsters. I don't know what more I need to say, the man literally raced and kept up with Zoom. Although being the literal opposite of Superman in almost every way, he has a near identical set of powers compared to Superman, with him funnily enough having an ability Superman hasn't shown since the Silver Ages, being able to create identical versions of himself with his Bizarro beams. But it's important to note that Bizarro can only use this ability while under a blue sun. The Elseworlds version of Superman shown in the Alex Ross's run of Kingdom Come would be at the top of this tier. And before I really get into quantifying his strength, I first want to clear up many misconceptions regarding his strength and add much needed context to some of his feats. A common claim used to scale Kingdom Come Superman Superman to or even above post-crisis Superman is shown in the 13th issue of the Justice Society of America, where Kingdom Come Superman was able to no-sell Hercules' attack and brush him off, while the same post-crisis Superman seemed to have gotten handled by Hercules. But this is very clearly taken out of context. Post-crisis Superman wasn't beaten by Hercules at all. He was literally cheap-shotted while trying to tend to Hercules' injuries for literally no reason at all. So he was very clearly not on guard, whereas Kingdom Come Superman was done with Hercules' shenanigans and dealt with him accordingly. Right after this happens, post-crisis Superman literally slumps Hercules, proving his superiority to the demigod. So this feat can't really be used to prove he's stronger. And while on the topic of strength, it's also heavily implied that post-crisis Superman is stronger than his older counterpart, who in Justice Society of America issue number 14, with the help of the Justice Society of America, though lost and got bodied by the William Matthews version of Gog. Whereas in Action Comics number 815, the post-crisis version of Superman fought the same Gog that his Earth 22 counterpart lost to, putting up a significantly better fight and even besting Gog during his encounter, only beginning to lose to Gog after being stabbed with his spear imbued by kryptonite, showing us that Gog needed to resort to nerfing post-crisis Superman to even stand a chance against him, a stark contrast compared to his fight against Kingdom Come Superman. It's also important to note that Kingdom Come Superman also has superior magic resistance compared to his post-crisis counterpart, shown with him enduring Hercules' attacks that would naturally be imbued with magic due to his lineage and standing within the DC universe, and he still performed worse against his younger counterpart. Post-crisis Superman would then go on to fight and defeat Gog again, and more Gogs, and in Convergence issue number 7, Superman disrespectfully ragdolls his Kingdom Come variant, likely temporarily rendering him out of commission. Even with his inferiority to post-crisis Superman now being clear, I still find it hard to put him below the likes of Bizarro or Red and Blue Superman. He's still relative to post-crisis Superman, which would make him relative to Bizarro in strength, on top of the fact that he's much more seasoned and savvy with some of his abilities, and he's just way smarter. He'd also have the same immeasurable speed implications that Bizarro has, with Jay Garrick himself even stating that this Superman might be as fast as Wally, the same Raleigh who literally ran through time and ran to the end of the universe. Although this was just Jay Garrick's speculation, meaning that there's some room for doubt or uncertainty, just getting Jay Garrick to hypothesize such would mean that he's at a bare minimum relative to or in the same bracket of speed as Wally, which would scale him above Bizarro's speed. If you want to highball him to the nth degree, his wrath was stated to be so strong that he can even have the Satan of the DC universe shook, and these words came out of the mouth of the Spectre. So yeah, if you take this statement hyper literally, he probably solos. The Superman from the Silver Ages, better known these days as pre-crisis Superman, would eclipse all of the feats prior, showcasing a multitude of low multiversal feats, such as at time he endured the full force of a Big Bang while journeying to the beginning of time to find the central pillar of existence, later finding the pyramid that existed at the beginning of time that could endure the full energy of the Big Bang and one-shotting it, resulting in ripples that could be felt all throughout time. He would then go on to fight in DC's first Crisis event, known as Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he would fight against the Anti-Monitor, a being from the antimatter universe who showcased the power to reduce an infinite amount of universes throughout all of time into a handful. Silver Age Superman was shown being able to endure and react to the Anti-Monitor's attacks, and also played a large part in beating the Anti-Monitor. He would also scale to his world Supergirl, who was shown shattering the Anti-Monitor's armor, weakening their ultimate enemy and leading to his eventual defeat, though without loss. This Superman would also have higher immeasurable speed scaling than his other counterparts by being able to casually fly through the bonds of infinity, fly through time like it's water, and literally, no joke, tossing Titano, a super ape powered by cosmic radiation, through time. It literally throws him back into the Stone Age. Now that I made it clear that he definitely more than holds his own against the lower tier, his placement over Kingdom Come Superman mostly stems from his showings in Crisis on Infinite Earths against the Anti-Monitor, a being way more powerful than the likes of Gog or Magog. If KC Superman could even beat Gog while jumping him, I find it very unlikely that he could survive an onslaught from the anti-god. He could even outright beat Superboy. Moving on, pre-crisis Superman has a multitude of hacks and abilities, such as his super hypnotic eye beams, a miniature version of himself that he can fire through his hands, BFR through time stream removal, and many more wacky and overpowered abilities that can help get him a W. But he'd still, in my honest opinion, be weaker than the original Golden Age Superman, the predecessor to all superheroes who debuted in 1938. Through him being awfully similar to the Silver Age Superman in scaling at certain points in his history, and to avoid being too redundant, I'll detail his power fluctuations over the course of his history. It's honestly pretty interesting. As shown in the Justice League of America Volume 1, number 74, the Superman of Earth 2 in his younger days was shown fighting on par with his Silver Age counterpart, while mind controlled, with Silver Age Superman during their encounter stating that the Golden Age of Superman was, quote, just as strong as he was. After this encounter, however, the Golden Age of Superman would go through the test of time, becoming a more experienced Superman, falling in love, marrying Lois, joining the Justice Justice Society of America, and by the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, nearing the start of his decline, with him fighting alongside his Silver Age counterpart on numerous occasions, even before the events of the Crisis. With Silver Age Superman during one of their team-ups in Superman Family issue 186 and 187, outright calling Golden Age Superman an equal in strength, which is also heavily implied given the context of that scene, where the two of them are contemplating undergoing a fusion that only equals can endure to double their strength. But in that same token, in one of their later encounters, Golden Age Superman admits that he's weaker than his younger counterpart, and by the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, he's shown fighting alongside Cavill, sucker punching and staggering the Silver Age Superman before delivering the final blow against a weakened Anti-Monitor. So I find it likely that even at this point, the both of them were borderline equals, with Golden Age Superman being a half a step slower and a bit weaker. By now you're probably wondering why I have him ranked over Silver Age Superman if I think he's weaker by the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. I mean, he's only gonna get weaker as time goes on, right? But I find this much more complicated than that. Remember Superboy? No, not that one. Yeah, the Superboy that Silver Age Superman met. Superboy Prime was not only just a powerhouse in his own right, but was even relative to pre-Crisis Superman in power. So much so that he pretty much signs a free agent Superboy to help them during the Crisis and argues that Superboy might actually be stronger than he is. So even that early into his history, he was more or less equal to all of the pre-Crisis Kryptonians and powerhouses. During the Crisis event, the Anti-Monitor pretty much obliterated Earth Prime and Earth 2, leaving Superboy, Earth 2 Superman, and Lois homeless by the events of the Crisis, leading to them deciding to live alongside Alexander Luthor in his pocket dimension, which would pretty much give them a bird's eye view to the post-Crisis universe, after which Alexander Luthor would pretty much convince Superboy Prime to help him remake the universe in their image, which led to Superboy Prime performing one of the craziest feats in DC's history, shown in the Infinite Crisis secret files, punching Alexander Luthor's pocket dimension so hard that he literally rewrites and retcons DC's history and continuity on a multiversal scale. He literally hit the dimension so hard that Jason Todd was literally revived from the dead. I also left out the fact that Superboy Prime was severely nerfed while performing this feat due to his lack of yellow sunlight, and he could still perform a feat of that magnitude, a feat that I feel is really important for the section for mainly two reasons. For one, Superboy's retcon punches were not enough. He was only able to completely break through the dimension after getting amped by Alexander Luthor's antimatter abilities. The other reason why I'm bringing this up is because everyone seems to forget to mention that in the first issue of Infinite Crisis, Golden Age Superman, or Kal-El, literally broke through the dimension as well, while enduring the same nerf to his power as Superboy Prime, barring the amp. So he literally replicated this exact feat by himself. Remember, Superboy Prime was pretty much near equal to Silver Age Superman back in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and after being amped by Alexander Luthor, Superboy Prime pointed out that his power was unlike anything he's ever felt, giving him the confidence that he could do anything, likely empowering him beyond his normal capabilities, which would scale him above pre-Crisis Superman. And Golden Age Superman, while weakened, was still relative to this amped Superboy, which means that based off his showings from Infinite Crisis, a fully powered Golden Age Superman should be stronger than a pre-Crisis Superman, making him higher end low multiversal with immeasurable speeds, power that Golden Age Superman would go on to back up in his fight against post-Crisis Superman, shown in the 5th issue of Infinite Crisis, with their mere clashes shattering the boundaries of space and time and throwing the entire universe in disarray. Later in Infinite Crisis, he would go on a fight against an even more powerful and enraged Superboy Prime with the help of post-Crisis Superman, laying down his life and playing an equal part in weakening their Prime variant. Enough of the New 52 downplay. Low solar system and massively FTL scaling is very dishonest and doesn't really capture how strong he was, with him being shown in the 3rd issue of Darkseid War, drawing blood from the Anti-Monitor, endowed with the full power of the anti-life equation, that was stated by Metron to have cracked open the entire multiverse, threatening all of reality. A statement that, while keeping the power of the original Anti-Monitor and the size of the DC universe in mind, would merit multiversal plus levels of power. This is further supported by statements that puts this version of the Anti-Monitor's base power on the same level as his Crisis on Infinite Earth's counterpart, who could fire out waves of antimatter that threaten to destroy every infinite universe throughout all of time. And there are guides that state that his anti-life transformation made him even stronger than he ever was before. If you still don't buy this and see this feat as a massive outlier, after being killed by Black Flash, a fusion of the Flash and Black Racer in Darkseid War issue 2, Darkseid would then go on to later be revived by his daughter Grail, now imbued with the full power of the anti-life equation, likely surpassing passing Mobius, who as I already established was a multiversal level threat. Superman, after releasing all of the solar energy he stored up from Apocalypse, was still able to endure the Omega Beams from a newly revived and bloodlusted Darkseid, and with the power to threaten the entirety of DC's multiverse. Since Darkseid was already able to contend against a multiversal level Anti-Monitor in base, and got another multiversal level amp on top of that, at a bare minimum, New 52 Superman would have to have multiversal plus level AP and durability. New 52 Superman pretty much fought against and fended off attacks from characters who are stronger than the original Anti-Monitor. Though it's important to note that Superman is still weaker than these threats. These feats will still be vastly above everything else we've seen from the other versions. To threaten any significant portion, let alone all of DC's cosmology in any time frame, would have to require attack speeds that can encompass and cover the entirety of DC's cosmology. That's constantly expanding and has many statements that makes its size infinite, meaning that the Anti-Monitor and his attacks would have to move at irrelevant or immeasurable speeds to pose this great of a threat. This is also backed up by the fact that the original Anti-Monitor could tag pre-crisis characters and speedsters, who could move at immeasurable speeds, and this Anti-Monitor would at least scale to that, meaning that due to him being able to fight against the Anti-Monitor and evade and react to a bloodlusted Darkseid's attacks, New 52 Superman would also scale to these speeds. Around here is where post-crisis Superman would be placed, as this Superman was able to fight against and damage the likes of Soulfire Darkseid, who after absorbing the power from countless New God souls, could combat the likes of Infinity Man, who's essentially an avatar of the Source. Just to give you a perspective of how powerful the Source really is, the Source is vastly more powerful than even the Anti-Life Equation, which I already made clear was a threat to the entire multiverse. The Anti-Life Equation is an exact opposite and equal to the Life Equation, which is only half of the Source. The Source being responsible for everything that is and will ever be, being the foundation of which the entirety of the DC Omniverse was built on, sitting above the DC Universe and making its nature omnipotent and complex multiversal, possibly even outerversal. And Soulfire Darkseid could go to blows against Infinity Man, albeit weaker than the true Source and limited by what the characters present can even comprehend, but still representing its powers. I also find it likely that Soulfire Darkseid is stronger than its post-Flashpoint counterpart amped by the Anti-Life Equation, which is only a fraction of the true Source, whereas Infinity Man, as I pointed out multiple times, is a stated avatar of it. When trying to quantify post-Crisis Superman's strength, just off of him being able to punch a hole right through and damage this same Darkseid and endure his attacks, would pretty much put his AP and durability on a higher end of multiversal to possibly even low complex multiversal. I already touched on his speed multiple times in this video, but in summary, his relative to pre-crisis level characters and could tag the likes of an amped Superboy on multiple occasions, on top of him fighting on par with and against Golden Age Superman, and reacting to Soulfire Darkseid, giving him immeasurable speeds as well. I know, shocker. Making our way to the next tier is the Golden Superman shown in DC's 1 million storyline. Before I get into his scaling, like I did for KC Superman, I first want to dispel the many misconceptions regarding his abilities. Many people try to claim that he revived Lois and can create life forms from nothing, but his perception of his abilities is very clearly taken out of context. Lois wasn't brought back to life by Superman. She was revived by the Superman of the 5th dimension known as Lipsum Lipid, showing that this level of reality manipulation is just out of his depth. The next thing taken out of context is that he somehow created a universe when he was very clearly just welcoming the Atom from an entirely different reality to the universe he lives in. So when looking at his best feats and showings, they are relatively unimpressive compared to this list, but at the bare minimum, he is the future version of post-crisis Superman due to his story being released as a possible future of the post-crisis continuity. So he would naturally be vastly above his past self by an unquantifiable amount. He was shown to have been bestowed the final lantern ring of this universe and is still the shining beacon of hope in the world of heroes, likely boasting a level of skill and mastery over his powers well above that of most of his other versions, on top of his overwhelming willpower, which would make his constructs all the more harder to break. After his fight against Rao, and after the events of Darkseid War, Superman's exposure to kryptonite and the fires of Apocalypse were revealed in the final days of Superman to have had devastating effects on his cells, with Superman finding out that he's dying. After meeting his post-crisis self, and after entrusting the future of the world to his predecessor, the Superman of the New 52 would go on the merge with post-crisis Superman, undoing the work of Dr. Manhattan, merging all of their memories, feats, and powers together, leading to the creation of Rebirth Superman. Rebirth Superman has many feats and statements that would just make him way stronger than his prior selves, with him telling Lex that concepts such as space and time don't mean anything to him anymore, and that he's stronger than he's ever been before. A statement that due to the end of Dark Knight's Metal would mean that this Superman would remember his golden, silver, and post-crisis selves. adding validity to this statement, meaning that he would naturally scale above his past selves. In Superman 2018 Volume 1, Superman was able to shake the entirety of the Phantom Zone, an infinite low complex multiversal structure unbounded by the concept of time that lies in the sphere of the gods and serves as a barrier between the multiverse and the dark multiverse. This feat is also magnified by Superman saying that he can make the entirety of the Phantom Zone cease to exist if he really put his head to it. Rebirth Superman would then go on to encounter and fight against the World Forger, son of Perpetua, who's the literal mother of the multiverse, who with his brothers, the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor, crafted the rules of the universe and created multiple multiverses that lie in the 6th dimension. Although the World Forger did allude to his power being weakened due to him nerfing himself to exist on the 3rd dimensional plane, he's still implied to be in the complex multiversal level range due to him striking fear in the heart of Mr. Mixie, making him far stronger than the likes of the 5th dimensional imp, even while in his weakened state. The same mix as Pilic, who could destroy every infinite multiverse casually. So even while being this powerful, he still saw Superman as so much of a threat to himself and his plan that he literally created a pocket dimension in the 6th dimension to weaken Superman, and verbatim said that if Superman wasn't in there, him and his plan would be finished. Superman, while trapped and weakened in the 6th dimension, proceeded to regain his composure and with a little help from Batman, amped himself to an unimaginable level and one-shot the World Forger, destroying his multiverse. But off that statement alone, even without the amp, it's likely he would still be a threat to a weakened 6th dimensional level being. Rebirth Superman can fight against someone who could bully a 5th dimensional imp, so he'd likely be in the low complex multiversal range of power and complex multiversal when Sunday. Whereas Prime 1 million, if we highball him to the utmost degree, is just barely on this level. Unless you believe that getting speed blitzed and ragdolled by the 7 deadly sins scales him to unkindness Raven. The Superman from a Strange World far exceeds all, shown being able to access a dimension even more volatile than the 5th dimension, that even the likes of Mr. Mixie can only dream of entering, a feat that would put Strange Visitor Superman on the level of a 6th dimensional level being or high complex multiversal. He was shown being able to tag Mr. Mixie and showcase the ability to resist and counteract Mr. Mixie's hacks, giving him high tier hack resistance as well. After accessing the 6th dimension, billions of years would soon pass, revealing that Strange Visitor Superman is still alive and outlived everyone, even the final god of the DC universe, laying him to rest before reuniting his essence into one being again, letting go of this reality in God's absence. Imagine Prime 1 million if he lived for billions of years. Yeah, this is him. Strange Visitor Superman was already a 6th dimensional level being prior to entering that dimension. He would then have billions upon billions of years to perfect and test his abilities and limits, likely meaning that the scaling presented for him is a low ball. He scales above Mr. Mixie, which would give him higher end immeasurable speed scaling as well, so he would scale above Rebirth Superman due to the fact that he was already on a 6th dimensional level even before the time skip, whereas Rebirth Superman while sun-dipped can only beat a significantly weakened 6th dimensional level being, who actively had to nerf himself to exist on that plane. So Strange Visitor Superman pre-time skip would be stronger than a base and sun-dipped Rebirth Superman, and by the end of the story, he would naturally be vastly stronger than his prior self. Whether you're a fan or not a fan, love him, hate him, doesn't matter. Superboy Prime is not to be taken lightly. Infamously known for rewriting DC's history and rupturing the post-Crisis' continuity on a multiversal scale, with his now coined retcon punch, solo squatting the likes of a Speed Force imbued Barry, the entire Justice League, the Green Lantern Corps, and Golden Age and post-Crisis Superman. You get it, he's pretty powerful. But what if I told you he's actually way stronger by the events of Dark Knight's Metal, wherein Superboy Prime was shown being capable of fighting against the Darkest Knight, who prior to this clash in the 5th issue, beat down the mother of the multiverse in Perpetua and absorbed all of her anti-crisis energy, with their battle raging across every facet of reality and threatening to destroy the entire multiverse, with the one who laughs power even attracting the attention of beings from the greater Omniverse, such as the Chronicler and the Hands, who are essentially beings employed by the Source to create infinite multiverses through the use of anti-crisis energy, with Perpetua being a rogue among these beings. The one who laughs was pretty much able to mid-diff the same Perpetua who could fight against the likes of her children, that being the Anti-Monitor, World Forger, and Monitor, multiple 6th dimensional level beings who needed to merge together just to combat their corrupted mother on an equal playing field. And Superboy Prime can pretty much beat and stare down a character who's stronger than this. This would scale Superboy Prime over Strange Visitor Superman, who's kinda just unquantifiably on that level, whereas Superboy Prime can outright load if beings on this level. A retcon punch or two from Superboy Prime should get the job done. What kind of a list would this be if it didn't include the Thought Robot, or as most DC fans call him, Cosmic Armor Superman? Shown in the first issue of Final Crisis Superman Beyond, being activated through the clash of two fundamentally opposing qualities, merging the energies of Superman and Ultraman, and activating the multiverse's ultimate defense against the ultimate threat, unleashing the Thought Robot on his darker half known as Mandrax, with the two beings representing the concept of DC's story and duality itself, with the Dark Monitor and the Thought Robot being born during the beginning of creation in the mind of the Overvoid, with the Monitor's mind even being beyond the source wall itself, essentially representing the white canvas of a comic book, meaning that Mandrax and by proxy Cosmic Armor Superman are beings that predate thought itself, with even the world of Limbo, the realm right below the Monitor Sphere at the edge of reality, where matter and memory break down, paling in comparison to the sheer size of the Thought Robot. This is further supported by the fact that the Monitor Sphere, the second highest realm in DC's multiverse, being destroyed as a result of their fight. The Thought Robot and Mandrax would proceed to have their ultimate battle, which was stated by the writer to have taken place at the very edge of the art, at the edge of the mind of God himself. This would very blatantly make Cosmic Armor Superman stronger than anything Superboy Prime could throw at him due to his sheer transcendence, likely meaning that Cosmic Armor Superman's power is out-reversal due to the nature of the Overvoid. The Overvoid is beyond that of even the likes of the Monitor Sphere, and literally represents the pages of the book itself that serves as the foundation for ideas. It's more than just the DC universe, it represents things outside of it. The resulting clashes between Perpetua, Superboy Prime, and the One Who Laughs threatened the entirety of DC's multiverse. The clash between the Thought Robot and Mandrax destroyed an absolute realm of nothingness beyond everything, with the Thought Robot being created to protect all of existence against the ultimate enemy, and being stated to be capable of adapting instantly to any threat. The concept of strength wouldn't matter, the concept of speed is irrelevant. Any conceivable way you could see him losing is nil, due to his sheer power allowing him to resist the power of the hyper story, or in other words, the literal plot trying to destroy him. Thanks for watching. We're almost at 1,000 subs and I have you all to thank for that. I genuinely didn't expect to grow that quickly off of just 2 videos. Make sure you stay tuned for more videos like this in the future, and let me know in the comments who you guys think is the strongest version of Superman. I hope you all have a good rest of your day. This is Destro, and I'm out.